I was a little surprised when we went to get Josie Slayton in the middle of the night. The call came down right after midnight. Dupree and I had just finished showers in confinement, a 4-hour affair most nights that had seemed to take all night. We had kicked our feet up on the desk, preparing to relax a little, when the phone rang over the sound of Nickelback that Sergeant Lang was listening to. Lang put down the folder he was going over and paused the music just before picking up on the third ring. "Confinement, Lang speaking." Dupree cocked an eye at Lang when he sat up a little straighter. I had already decided that this was likely going to be the death of our rest tonight. "Warden? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He's in 2203. "Yes? Yes, sir. You want him so late?" Of course. No, sir. No. I'd never question your orders. We'll bring him right away." As he slid the phone back into the cradle, he glanced over at us with a look of regret. "Sorry, guys. Looks like the warden wants to see someone." "Who?" Dupree asked, one eye still closed, the other glaring maliciously. "Inmate Slayton," Lang said, as though that wasn't the worst inmate we had at the moment. I made a disgusted noise. "At midnight? Can we even do that? It's hard enough to pull inmates out of confinement during daylight hours, and he wants us to move this guy in the dead of night?" Lang just shrugged. "Warden's orders." Dupree got up, his boots slapping the floor. I, however, was not convinced. "Are they sending anyone to help us?" Lang just shook his head. "He seems to think that you and Dupree can handle it." "You're joking, right? Slayton's pending transfer to another facility for assault on staff. He has an order on his door that says the captain has to be present before you can even take him out for a shower." It was a little more than that, though. Slayton was our newest celebrity here at Stragview. He had crisscrossed the South, Louisiana to West Virginia, robbing banks and raising hell. After killing 3 cops in a bar near Albany, Slayton had finally stepped his game up to murder, and he had also escalated on his next robbery. He had shot 3 hostages after the job had gone south, one of them a pregnant woman, and they had thrown the book at him. 7 life sentences, served consecutively, with no chance of parole. Inmates hated him because he had murdered a pregnant woman. The officers hated him because he was a cop killer. And most everyone hated him because he was a young, dumb asshole. I knew a lot of men who would have stepped through those gates a humbled man and quickly learned to keep their head down. Slayton was not one of them. He had been here 3 weeks, and in that time, he had assaulted 5 inmates, tried to sexually assault a nurse, and then assaulted 2 staff members when they had tried to stop him. One of them had needed to be sent to the hospital. His nose had been very broken, and Slayton was charged accordingly and sent to confinement. While there, he had assaulted his roommate, flooded his cell, thrown feces at 2 officers, of which I was one of, and threatened to hurt himself unless he could talk to the captain. No one had mentioned he was claustrophobic, a fact that did not matter, and he'd been keeping the quad awake for a solid week now. It appeared that he was going higher than the captain, though. Lang shrugged again, saying, "Warden's orders." We had a little choice but to get the little sociopath ready then. He was asleep when we arrived, having just finished screaming himself out, but he perked up as we approached the door. He was undressed, naked except for a wide grin that showed a mouthful of broken teeth, and he sat himself for the fight as I shined the light through the little hole. He had set his back to the wall. If it weren't for the smile, I would have thought he was scared. "Settle down, Slayton. Warden wants a word." He perked up then. It appeared he understood that he was going straight over the captain's head and all the way to the top of the totem pole. He dug his blues out from under the bed, slid on the soft shoes we gave him to wear in here, and stepped up like he was expecting us to just open the door and turn him loose. I shook the cuffs at him, nodding my head towards the leg restraints that Dupree had. There would be no walking to the warden's office. There would be a slow, contemplative shuffle instead. He rolled his eyes. "And what if I choose not to put on them cuffs?" Dupree beat me to the punch. "Then we get the captain down here, and me and 6 other guys go in there and drag you out to the warden's office in a hand dolly. Your choice." He turned around and got his hands out of the flap easy enough. 5 minutes later, we were making our slow way towards the security building to see the warden. It's funny how night changes the compound. I could see the hollows around the streetlights, clouds of bugs hovering in slow circles as they followed its mesmerizing light. During the day, the yard is a noisy mess of moving bodies, but at night, it's occupied just by the yard staff, 2 to 3 officers who patrol around doing odd jobs. And of course, the things that feed at night. Slayton was clumping down the walkway, probably looking for frogs to step on, with his ankle chains swinging and clacking on the pavement as he walked. The captain and his yard officers looked up as we went by, looking like zoo animals as they stared at the smudgy windows of their office, but none of them came out to question what we were doing or help us with the process. Whether they had been informed what we were doing or not, it appeared they were intent on staying out of it. It appeared that Dupree and I were on our own. We came to the admin building, looking forlorn and a little spooky at 12:30 at night, and this is where the plan deviated. "Head on in. I want to have a smoke before we go see the warden," Dupree said, taking a crumpled pack of cigarettes out of his pocket. I looked unsure. "Sure about that? What if he wants to?" "He ain't gonna do shit. He's ambled along, fine as milquetoast, 'cause he's getting what he wants." He turned to Slayton anyway and fixed him with an even look. Dupree was 6'5" of solid muscle. He was pretty good at even looks. "I trust I don't have to tell you that making trouble this close to the finish line would be a great way to get thrown back in your cell with nothing but cold steel to sleep on and nothing to eat for breakfast besides whatever crawls out from under your bed, right?" Slayton settled his eyes into what must have been a sorrowful look, at least as far as he knew, but I could see the mischief dancing behind those half-crazed eyes, and I didn't like it. "You got my word, Sarge. I'll be good." Dupree snorted like he didn't believe him. "I ain't no Sarge, and if I hear so much as a shoe scuff on the hallway, I'll be on you before my ash has a chance to cool on the sidewalk." He sparked the end of his cigarette, and we stepped into the long hallway. It was dark, all the offices closed and locked for the night, but one office cast a lone light across the linoleum. The words "Warden" hung in the black letters across the door, and though Slayton seemed eager to make his way down the hall, I was suddenly unsure. All my alarms were going off now, and I was suddenly wondering why we had agreed to this. Slayton was getting away, though, and it was too late to think about it now. The warden invited us in as I raised a hand to knock. I had never seen his office before. It was a simple, neat little room with a desk, a chair for guests, and a chair for the warden. He sat behind the desk, fingers steepled in front of him like someone contemplating the arcane. He invited Slayton to have a seat before turning to me. "You may leave if you want. I have some matters to discuss with inmate Slayton." "I think I should stay, sir. Inmate Slayton has multiple accounts of violence against other inmates and staff. Cap would flip out if he knew that I just left him in here with you alone." The warden shrugged. "Your choice. All I ask is that you stand quietly and don't interfere." I nodded, taking my spot by the desk so I could intercept Slayton if he decided to get froggy. The warden turned his full attention to the inmate then, and Slayton did not seem to like being the recipient of that scrutiny. "I have brought you here to offer you a deal," the warden said, setting a black book between them which must have been on his lap. I found my eyes rooted to that book. As I watched it, it seemed to breathe and shift on the calendar that sat atop the warden's desk. I wasn't sure what to make of it. It looked like 1,000 ledgers or family Bibles I'd seen in my lifetime, but I knew instinctually that it was like nothing my eyes had ever seen before. It was wrong somehow. It didn't belong here, any more than Slayton belonged in this office. "It has come to my attention that you have decided to make life difficult for my staff and for yourself. You have caused more trouble in the short time you've been here than most inmates have caused during their whole stay." "That's 'cause I don't want to be here," Slayton cut in. "I told my damn lawyer that I wanted to be in the facility near Alto, not this spook house. I ain't no death row inmate, so I want to transfer to Alderdine State Prison, and I'm prepared to spend the next 7 lifetimes making life hell for you and your boys." The warden smiled like Slayton had just offered him something lovely. "Oh, no need to make threats. I've decided to commute your sentence to time served and release you from this place this very night." Slayton looked like, of all the things he had expected, this was the one contingency he hadn't counted on. You're fooling me. You think I'm a simpleton. I ain't no dummy. You ain't no judge, and you sure ain't God, so I know you can't just turn me loose." "Quite the contrary. I'm prepared to release you from your bondage this very night." I opened my mouth, wanting to protest, but the warden gave me a look, and I suddenly found myself unable to continue. The warden opened the black book and spun it around to face Slayton. "All you have to do is Sign in this book." He offered Slayton a pen, a fancy silver thing that looked like it cost a fortune, and Slayton reached for it with a trembling hand. He stopped, though, as sanity tried to reassert itself. "No fooling? I sign this and I'm free?" The warden spread his hands. "Free to go wherever the wind takes you." Slayton couldn't have put his name down fast enough, and his chains jingled merrily as he signed the book. He slid it back to the warden when he'd finished, pin sitting in the spine. He was all smiles, holding his cuffs out to have them removed, before a strange look crossed his face. It looked like a goose had suddenly walked across his grave. It happened suddenly. He sucked in a breath, his throat rattling like someone with a bad case of pneumonia. His arms shook as he stared at the man with the strange smile, and I saw him pitch forward as he lost balance. I reached out, meaning to catch him, and had just enough time to see his face gain spider webs of wrinkles. When my hands caught his chest, I had half a second to register the frail bones and slack skin of an old man beneath those prison blues. He looked up into my face, and I imagined I could see his skin turning to powder as his hair tumbled from his head in clumps. Then my hand broke through his chest, and he just sort of turned to powder before he crumbled to the floor in a heap of ash. His chains made an angry clunk as they hit the ground a half second before his close. Then, true to the warden's word, Slayton was free to go where the wind took him. I stood over the pile for a few seconds as I tried to process what had just happened. I was currently standing in the warden's office with the remains of a deceased inmate, and no one but the warden and his creepy book to say that I hadn't had a hand in it. I was going to be in a lot of trouble when I didn't come back with Slayton. What was I going to tell Sarge? What was I going to tell the captain? "Relax," the warden said as he closed the book and slid it into his desk. "The paperwork says day shift found him dead in his cell 2 days ago. You have nothing to worry about." He indicated the chair that still had bits of powder from Slayton in it, but I declined. What in the hell was that?" I stuttered. The warden only shrugged. His sentence was commuted. His time was served. You told him you would release him." "And I did. Slayton served 7 life sentences in a matter of seconds. Funny what that does to a body." I could feel myself getting ready to hyperventilate. The sight of all the dust wafting around making my head light. That dust had been a person. It had been a living person, and the warden had taken his life from him. He'd taken more than that, I supposed. He'd taken his humanity, too. The warden once again indicated the chair, but I shook my head, and he shrugged. "I have a promotional opportunity for you if you're interested. The work camp needs a new sergeant, and I think you'd be perfect for the job. That is, if you know where your loyalties lie," he added the last bit with a big cartoon grin. I had only to look at the pile of man bits wafting across the floor to have my answer. Can I talk it over with my captain before I abandon my shift?" "You may." I moved towards the door, picking up the cuffs and trying not to shudder as my hand touched the pile of dust. He called my name, though, and brought me up short. It goes without saying that if I ever hear Slayton's name spoken again, your name will be going into that book next. I nodded, leaving his office for the last time. Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining me for tonight's story. If you think you might be able to handle just one more creepy tale, go ahead and click on one of the stories you can doubtlessly see appearing at the end of this one. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button too. Maybe hit that bell so you don't miss any of the spooky things that we do here. If, like so many of my patrons, you decide you'd like to get your spooky a little bit earlier, why not come on down to Patreon and have a look at some of the great tiers that I have. My $5 tiers get their spooky a little early, and they have their name read out at the end of every TikTok and every YouTube video that I make. If you'd like a copy of my latest book, there's a link below to my Amazon profile. I've got mini books. I'm sure you'll find one that'll suit you there. I always recommend Stragview Stories, as it's the one I'm the most proud of. It contains a large collection of prison horror stories out of Stragview, the prison that I've made in the Georgia hills. So, if you'd like to have a look, come on down. Before we go, let's go ahead and thank our patrons. Thanks to Janet for being our Spooky Skeleton tier contributor, And thanks to Winter, Xaronan, Emily Coltsfoot, Stephanie Carrington, Marianne Schuler, Tyler Parker, and Jennifer Damron for being my ghostly reader tier contributors. Thanks, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.